So are they also recording it?
Yes, we're live streaming it also.
Yeah, tell him to start it.
Yeah. Just waiting for Gayatri to join.
Madhvi, is this still in echo?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Fine.
Now
Okay.
it's fine. Yeah. Just need to check. Sure.
You should start in a minute afterwards.
Hi, Murthy.
Gayatri is there.
Okay,
Sorry,
so-
my camera is not working too good, so my image is not coming out well. It just suddenly went off.
Oh, okay.
It's
But we
dark,
can
I
see
think.
you.
Gayatri.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
it's-
background is dark. First, the image was not coming at all. And now the
Yeah.
image is coming, but the background has become very dark.
Okay. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So Madhvi, I think you should start now.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. And on behalf of CEE and the C Academy, let me welcome everybody to the roundtable discussion on transformative education approaches for handprint action. We are organizing this discussion on the International Day of Education, which is the 4th International Day of Education. And this was proclaimed as the International Day of Education in celebration of the role of education for peace and development by the United Nations General Assembly. And basically, it looks at the whole aspect of transformation and its importance in terms of the urgency in rebalancing our relationships with each other, with nature, as well as with technology. And looking at the challenges, opportunities, and also raising questions related to aspects such as equity, inclusion, and democratic participation of all concerned. And for this, education is the key to charting the course towards more justice and sustainability. UNESCO brought out a report in November 2021, which is called the Reimagining Our Futures Together, a New Social Contract for Education. And as part of that report, it looks at 3 questions mainly. What should we continue doing? What should we abandon? What needs to be creatively reimagined? And it also talks about the COVID-19 pandemic, which is a reminder of our fragilities and interconnectedness. So it also looks at the kind of innovations and the way we had to transform. Our children learn, our teachers are engaging with education, and we ourselves are looking at sustainability in the larger context as well. So it goes on to say that we can only transform together through solidarity and cooperation. We thought that it would be a good opportunity for all of us who are involved as educators and working on sustainability education to ponder on these questions and the questions that we've been having in terms of transforming education for sustainable development, specifically looking at also how it leads to handprint actions. So with this, I would like to introduce today's esteemed panel. Shri Kartike Sarabhai, he's our director and will lead the discussion today and also moderate. Shri Atul Bagai, country head UNEP India, will join us at 5 o'clock as he had a sudden engagement. He's not able to join us immediately. Let me welcome Abhijit Zakaria, Program Manager and Lead of Wipro Foundation. Ms. Rajeshwari Chandrasekhar, Chief of Field Office, UNICEF Maharashtra, and Gayatri Raghwa, Environment Education Consultant at UNEP India. So I would again welcome everybody and look forward to an engaging discussion over the next 45 minutes. And I would request Kartike Bhai to take over from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madhvi, and thank you everyone on the panel. I think what we thought we could start with would be for members of the panel to make maybe a 3 to 5 minute opening comment on how they see this whole aspect of transformative education, what transformation is happening and how it is going. As Madhvi already mentioned, UNESCO did come out with this paper and talked about a new social contract. So they have tried to see what's happening till 2050. But there are a lot of changes which are happening in spite of what people might want. So I think to some extent, the question, what should we continue and what are we going to change, might not entirely be in our hands. I think technology is changing rapidly. The whole pandemic situation has changed things in directions which are not really planned by us. We are only sort of responding the best we can. Just 2 weeks ago, if you had said we were just about starting our school programs in Ahmedabad again, in the municipal schools. This week, we are not, and we don't know when we are going to restart it. The whole issue of the gap, the divide between people who have a secure place to work from home, who have an instrument which they can connect, and those who don't, is a major issue. And how will we deal with it? So there are many things in this whole situation which needs to be looked at. India itself is in the process of implementing the new education policy. So there is a conscious effort at changing. So these are some of the issues, and I thought I would request the panel to speak from their experiences. We will then have like to do. So can I perhaps, Abhijit, can I start with you? Can I ask you to say something?
Sure. Thank you, Kartike Bhai. Thank you, Madhavi. Real pleasure to be on this panel today to discuss this issue. I just kind of like to obviously contextualize this within within the realm of sustainability education. It's a much broader issue which applies to education at large, of course. And I think the report that Madhavi just mentioned clearly outlines that. But if we had to kind of limit it, keep it within the confines of sustainability education, so I think transforming and a transformative education system is clearly in the need of the hour. I mean, especially if you. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, is this?
Sorry, can I request people who are not speaking to keep it on mute, please? Tarunlata ji. Abhijit, sorry, continue.
No problem.
They have not put it on mute, but I hope they will.
That's okay. Yeah. So I think what's happening, and I think that's clearly evident to everyone, right from a child to parents, the larger community, and governments, that climate change, COVID, all of these issues that are right, at our doorstep today. I mean, and the pace of change is fast outstripping our, capacity to adapt. And our capacity to respond, right? And so, which is why when you rightly mentioned that we are currently we're constantly in reactive mode, and whether it's whether it's policies or whether it's at a local level, how people are responding. So a lot of this is driven by the speed of change, and I think that's where a truly transformative education system and EE or ESD or sustainability education, whatever you want to call it, I think is absolutely essential. And now, COVID in particular, now, if you look at the last 2 years, it clearly has turned things on its head, right? And it has forced us to, make multiple changes in the way, we kind of deliver pedagogic systems, the way we work with teachers, both from urban and hinterland and rural, government school backgrounds, the way we engage with higher education, which is altogether another beast in one sense, right? But it has also blurred a lot of boundaries. So what otherwise for a lot of people were peripheral issues, especially to do with the environment, has now come to the fore. It's right at our doorstep, and I think people, it's blurred boundaries between communities and the people in them. It's blurred boundaries between local ecological systems and the people who otherwise interact with them. So I think that is, in one sense, also been a positive, because it's brought issues to the core of everyone's kind of being, right? And I think there's an opportunity here to learn from both the failures, to see how the systems have collapsed, the difference between the haves and have-nots, especially with this, infusion of sudden infusion of digital platforms. We've clearly seen a big difference. I think everyone working in education across the board, environment education, otherwise, has seen that. So how do we deal with this going forward? And I think there are other things. There are many things to be considered. Looking at pedagogies. Now, I think it's clear that learning cannot be just in the classroom, right? Now, how do you look at more experiential forms of learning, especially in environment education, so that people are more connected with planetary issues and local ecosystems and biodiversity, and the people who reside within those biomes, right? And all these interactions. I think this is the need of the hour. One more thing that I would like to point out is also, I think this is mentioned in the report, and this is one of the most important points that I would like to start with, is this knowledge of commons, building these knowledge repositories. Right now, everyone, whether it's organizations or individuals, higher education or otherwise, operate in a lot of silos. These silos might be disciplinary silos or geographical silos, and I think there's a need for everyone to come together on common platforms to kind of encourage knowledge sharing. So knowledge sharing, whether it's in pedagogic tools, or it could be about local contexts and experiences, lived experiences. I think this is critical. There are other tactical. So I would separate them into two large points. One is kind of tactical initiatives, which are small little nudges, small little changes that you can do at a school level or a community level or at policy level. And then there are, of course, the strategic changes, which require a far larger platform of every stakeholder, to be involved. And I think these strategic changes are equally important. Both need to kind of move hand in hand. And I think that's where the future lies, because otherwise, if you look at the word resilience, I think we will constantly be in reactive mode rather than developing this kind of resilient base that communities, governments, and children, teachers at large need. Yeah. So I think these are the initial thoughts that I'd like to kind of propose.
Thank you, Abhijit. And it's true. I think we need to discuss both these aspects, both the larger strategic change as well as the various tactical ones, and also to see how you can share that experience of the tactical ones. There are so many good on-field experiences, even around this round table. I think there will be so many wonderful experiences, but they seem to not necessarily become part of the mainframe. How do we really take it forward through this? Rajeshwari ji, can I ask you to make an initial comment? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, and thanks to you and to Madhavi and others organizing this event. I would like to say that the two agencies, UNICEF and UNESCO, have shared on the International Day of Education two perspectives about the learning loss. And from the UNICEF's perspective, and the report that they released today on the International Day of Education talks about the insurmountable impact of COVID-19 in terms of disruption on children's learning globally, not just in India, but globally. And then they're looking at these disruptions for them to end. It is not just enough that schools should be reopened, but schools and students need that intensive support to recover the lost education, which means that schools must go beyond places of learning, and children's mental and physical health, social development, and nutrition must be integrated. And this report coincides, as you have rightly pointed out, the UNESCO's report, which is also saying that at this rate, according to countries' own benchmarks, possibly nations participating in the SDG development goal of ensuring inclusivity and equitability in quality education, most countries will fail meeting their own goals, and therefore it's a wake-up call for the world, as millions of children will miss out on high-quality learning. So in this context of the impact of COVID on children globally, and on the lack of a fact that binds them together, there is a need, therefore, for a transformation in learning. And there is enough evidence now, actually, there's a warning that the current system is going to fail millions of people. And therefore, if we, in the spirit of the UNESCO's report, which talks about the social compact, to get together the knowledge of teachers, students, parents, communities, I think there are 3-4 things that we can already demonstrate from this country, from this state, and some of them would be in the order of decentralizing school reopening and school closures, because as you rightly said, Mr. Karthikeya, that today they are open, tomorrow they are closed. It's the same state even in Maharashtra, right? As of today, public schools are open from class 1 to 12. We don't know when they will close, but the decision making, if it is decentralized to the school level, to the ward level, or to the Gram Panchayat level, and not left at the state or the district level, then that will be a great way to bring about the compact, because that will depend upon the local situation of the incidence of the disease, of the availability of students, the availability of teachers, most importantly, the eagerness or the hesitancy of children's parents, the community, to send the children to school. So we need to decentralize the decision making. We need to, as a second, can I continue?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Avinash, can you put it on mute, please?
We need to also offer what is called a blended learning support, which means probably that all schools must reopen in an offline mode, and schools should continue to provide online classes for those cases where probably parents are not comfortable sending the child to school. But having the school closed is not an answer. We have to provide now the offline, and this is what is a blended, give to those what they want. We need to, of course, at the same time, strengthen the environment of the schools in terms of testing, vaccination, safety protocols, etc., ensuring ventilation. And last but not the least, as part of the social pact, is to prepare to bridge the learning gap. And if not anything, the COVID has actually demonstrated very clearly the digital divide between those who have access to internet facilities and those who do not. And we therefore need to define a robust plan to bridge this gap, including content, social and emotional skills, and which will actually help invest in education. And this is also what the social pact is talking about, to have resources for public education to build back better. I think that's the term we should use now, build back better, over a medium term of 3 to 5 years. Then I think this whole consideration of the UNESCO Social Pact, which is talking about a society-wide commitment, which is talking about relationships between students, teachers, knowledge, and the collaboration and teamwork, and recognizing teachers for their work, is all part of this larger game plan, where we build back better over a period of 3 to 5 years. So I think the two reports have come in very timely, and this opportunity of today's meeting is also equally timely, because we can really brainstorm on what could be the best way forward, and also offer some real life examples of what has been happening across the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajashri. You brought out two very key questions which are there just now. One is on this whole issue of decentralization, which also brings in a stronger parent-teacher or the community-school relationship, and gives certain decisions which can be contextualized and put into that thing. But on the other hand, if you take a state like Gujarat, for instance, we have something called the command and control of schools. It's a single office which through the computer really tells every school in Gujarat what they should teach when. So there is, and the thinking there, I presume, is also that if we do it centrally, we can get higher quality. So you have these two forces. You have the fact that because of online connectivity, there is a tendency to centralize. And at the same time, all our thinking is taking us in a direction that a decentralized, empowered community, an empowered teacher would be, in fact, a better model. So we've got both these schools happening. A second very important thing, which I want everyone to then discuss later, is this whole point that while we are looking at the transformation, which is going to happen in any case, whether we like it or not, there is also a need for a particular robust plan, as you put it, to bridge the damage which has been done over the last 2 years. Because if we don't issue that, this gap is very difficult to bridge. So let us take that up when we talk. But can I go to Gayatri, Raghava, Gayatri? Would you like to make your comments, Gayatri?
Okay,
And
thank you,
Gayatri is
Karthik.
talking. Gayatri said she's talking both as herself, and I have interacted with her in many forums, different, Gayatri wearing different hats, continue to do it even now, and also, of course, the UNEP hat. Gayatri.
Thank you, Karthik Bhai. Pleasure to be with Center for Environment Education on this very, very important day. I would like to, first of all, agree with what Abhijit said and also take the same approach that he took, which is sustainability education. Because one, that's where my experience comes from, or that's where I can probably talk or share my experience. So when I talk about it, when everybody was talking, I was reminded of David Orr's quote, and I'm sure, Karthik Bhai, you will remember it, where he said, all education, today is Environment Education Day, where he said, Education Day, he says, all education is environment education. By deciding what we include or we exclude from about what we teach, we either make a student or a participant feel a part of nature or a part of the natural world or apart from the natural world. So it's essentially, I feel very strongly about this quote, because that's where I think at some point in time, all education is environment education. So I have 3 points where I feel, I feel I could comment on. 3 things, in my opinion, are most essential in moving towards what we want as a transformative education. Number 1, agreeing with Abhijit, collaboration. Collaboration is the key. All my life, I've been in the field of environment education for so many years. This collaboration we all talk about. We say collaboration is the key. We need to collaborate. And we even say that there are 3 principles, which is your ecological knowledge, emotional intelligence, and social cohesion. These 3, when they come together, that's when the change happens. We talk about all of these things, but when it actually comes to social cohesion or building that collaboration, we all sit tight and don't do much about it. So this is where I feel very strongly that collaboration is the key. And I think, Karthik Bhai, you will agree, and Madhavi and Shrishti are there. You will also agree that Titan was an amazing opportunity for when WWF, CEE, UNEP, we not only collaborated, we got so many more environment education to come and support us as well. So I think collaboration is a key, and we know what that led to. Today, Titan is such a big success. Why? Because we collaborated. We worked as a team. So I think for any transformative education, collaboration is important. Collaboration between all environment. We work in silos. That is so true. The second thing that I would like to say is, we all talk about the crises that is happening. We talk about Code Red. We talk about triple planetary crisis. We talk about all of that. To me, one thing comes to my mind, in short of time. How do we, one of the biggest questions that comes in my mind is, how do we encapsulate whatever that we want to achieve or teach to the students in a short period of time, so that we can act on time and we can avert the crisis that we are expecting it to happen in another 20 years. So how do we work that way? As such, education looks at many different things, but education has been a slow process. Now we need to put all of that together. We need to put all kinds of education together. And for that, we need to actually look at the various connections and interconnections that happen with various forms of education and put it together. If we don't do that, then we are not going to be able to, I mean, we talk about climate crisis or climate action. We want to build youth for climate action. And then we want to take the climate education slowly. I've done a lot of programs which went in a very slow pace. Now we have to really fast wind it and do everything very fast, because we just have 20 years before. If we go business as usual, we will reach a 1.5 degrees Celsius, at least the code red situation, as they call it. When we are faced with that, can we afford to go slow? We need to be aggressive. And I feel we need to get collaboration happening fast. We need to really encapsulate all kinds of things together. And that can only be possible because so many resources are there. See, I know has a plethora of resources. WWF, go to anybody. Everybody has resources. I think we all just need to pull it together and build something together at one point so that we have a plan for how we can go fast wind the whole education process to avert the crisis. So that's my second point. The third point is I have always been an advocate of whole institution approach. In my experience, which I think all of you are aware, when I was in UAE, when we started the Sustainable Schools Initiative or Sustainable Campus Initiative, that was a whole institutional approach where we looked at the students, the community, the management, everybody together. And we had a very clear-cut plan of how we will approach the whole institution approach. And I think all education processes on all educational initiatives that we are looking at now should adapt that whole institutional approach, because we are not now separate. We are connected to so many more. Schools are connected to the community and everybody. We've been talking about it. We've been stating about it. But then we don't have activities and actions and initiatives which actually connects all the dots and connects all the parties together and makes it into a whole institutional approach. COVID taught us a lot of stuff. It taught us how we need to move online, and TTC was a fine example. And we said, oh, we will make it all online. And now we are looking at how can we make it online and offline? How are we going to solve the issue of single-use plastic if I'm not able to reach out to the youth in the rural areas or youth where there is no network connectivity? How would they come and contribute? How would they give their leadership, or how would we build them up? So I think we need to have both online and offline. To me, time is the essence. We sometimes go so slow. We discuss so many, we overthink things. As education, even I'm an educationist and I've always been one. Sometimes I think we overthink issues. We really need to proceed fast and have a very fast action plan. This is my quick takeaway from what you said.
Thank you, Gayatri. All the three views really converge with different ideas. I think, Gayatri, what you're saying, one of the problems is this flexibility, that while everyone might agree that this is what I should do, or I should move faster, you have the curriculum, you have the final test, you have something which is said which you have to do, you have the textbook. And that basic structure of the school, I think, has not changed from when I was a student, or even when my father was a student. You know, the basic school structure has remained largely intact. And the role of the teacher, the freedom which the teacher has kept changing depending on which system you are in. The reason for today's discussion, which has the word handprint in the title, was something which, as you know, since 2007, the UNESCO conference, she presented something from our own Andhra experience of children saying handprint. And handprint meant that while they are learning, they can still participate in a development process, because that's how we use it in ESD, that they are not doing just something which is an experiment for a classroom. They're actually going and fixing a leaking tap, or they're actually seeing that their own community will segregate waste, or they are going to see that they can look after some plants which they planted around their area. So actually separating that these are the years for education, these are the years for working, and these are the years for having a retired life or whatever. I think these distinctions, those silos are also breaking. So you need to do it. And therefore, to some extent, even the whole institution approach if you look at the new social contract thinking, it would go to saying that we need to involve the community also, which is not only the institution, but the stakeholders of the institution need to be understood. And what is that institution? And as Mr. Abhijit said, we are ultimately talking about sustainability in whatever we learn. Gayatri, you also said that we don't really see environmental education as an add-on subject, but a way of life, and the way of looking at anything, that we look at it from a sustainability point of view. And more this is happening. You see the rhetoric changing. Even over the last 15, 20 years, one was treated as something which was really peripheral to the Supreme Court, helping it move towards this thing. And many of us said, let it not be a separate subject, let us infuse it. And it was infused into subjects. The infusion has got better over time. We have many more techniques. There is a long way, because the inertia of the system is such that you can't change it overnight. I mean, the training so many teachers in a new technique itself takes time. But that is the way we need to perhaps go forward. So the handprint was a way of not only bringing positivity and empowerment, but also to not let students feel that it's hopeless. If you remember WWF's initial campaign, 1 minute to midnight or something, they found that it led to children feeling so despondent that, look, everything is going to be, by the time we grow up, it's going to be a horrible world. And that is, we wanted to change from that to saying, no, you can make a difference. And it's a very delicate balance to show how horrible things are, and at the same time say that they can still be changed. And I think that is a challenge we all have. I thought I would, there are so many people here with such experience. I would say that if you can, I can go around and get some comments or questions briefly, and just introduce yourself when you do that, and then I will go back to the panel and ask each one to comment on it. So maybe we take Sanskrit. Is it okay? We take another 5 minutes or so, 5 to 6 minutes to just get comments. And then if you have something specific for someone, ask it. But I'm going to ask all three of the panelists to respond to whatever they like from the questions. So will you just show your hand and do it? And I'm going to ask Preeti to ask the first question. Preeti, you.
Yeah. So we have, thank you so much. And it is like really, well, like opening remarks are like opening a lot of ideas, and we are thinking as an institution as well, and how do we work in collaboration. So the things which have emerged, we are thinking the entire education domain, we are thinking from the perspective of a child. But I feel teachers are very important, and they also need a lot of support. So I would like to know from our panelists that how do they see, how do we support teachers in this such time where we can help, like as Rajeshwari ji said, build back better. So their teachers' role will be much important. So how do we see that, and how do we plan that and discuss around that? Yeah.
Thank you. Any hands going up, or I will call people. Karen, would you like to say something before it's too late in Australia?
Thank you so much. This is a really interesting conversation, and obviously a very international one, because we're having similar conversations here and with some colleagues I'm working with in New Zealand and the UK. I wanted to pick up on the point that was just made about engaging the children while they're at school, because we have to help teachers, and it comes to Preeti's point as well, push teachers past this Ken Robinson's idea of a gas tank model, that we're filling them up for something that's going to happen later, for a journey that's happening later, and stop treating the children as citizens in waiting, and allow them to be citizens now. And so, like Preeti, I'm very interested in the panel's perspective of how do we change teacher perspective, that they're filling them for a later journey rather than they are already citizens, and it is part of their education to engage.
Gayatri, you want to respond now? Or shall I
Take a few
more
questions.
comments?
Yes, please do take a few questions.
I thought I'd just take a few more and then come back to all three of you, if that's
Yes,
okay.
please. Yeah.
Madhvi, you wanted to ask a question, Madhvi?
Yeah, I did actually. I think there's one more area which needs thinking in terms of, say, if we're talking of transformative education and in the present context, when we talk of blended learning and digital kind of space, what kind of changes in terms of materials or what kind of teaching learning tools that we need to look at, and what are there any specific examples which we already, of course, we have been all experimenting with this, but then how do you also evaluate learning? And those processes also probably might need to change. So how do schools and how do institutions respond to something like that?
Okay. Before I go on, I see Atul Bagaiji has joined us. And
hi Karthik.
Hi, Atul.
Please carry on.
What we have been having, we had opening comments from the three of the panelists on where they see the current situation and where we are going. There was a talk on how sustainability education is really coming to the center, but how we need to do both tactical and strategic thinking and changes, how we need a certain amount of decentralization, empowerment of teachers, and how we need to collaborate with each other, looking at the whole institution approach. And then there are some questions. But I thought, Atul, if over the next 3 to 5 minutes you want to give us some opening comment, and then we go back to the questions.
I thought I'll listen for some while to just get the gist, but thanks for giving that background. But also I wanted to apologize for being a little late, because there was a meeting going on of the resident coordinator with the Andhra Pradesh government. And I had to be there because I was coordinating that meeting. But certainly thanks for inviting us. And I would also not... I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the environment educators today on this World Environment Education Day, because they have played such a crucial part and a crucial role in this. And at that context, your question answers would come in, I'll try to highlight that. But these are the people who really go beyond the call of their duty to impart environment education to their students, which is becoming an increasingly important area of work. I've been seeing Karthik Bhai and his team for the last 30 years, doing this enormous duty to the nation, and some tremendous work has been done. So I'm thankful for inviting UNEP for this. I also see my colleague Gayatri is there, who actually is the one who's closely working with the CE on these issues, who's as passionate about this as anyone can be. But I certainly want to thank Karthik Bhai for choosing such an important topic for this. I'll subsequently raise some issues in terms of the importance of this from a sustainability point of view, and what role can it play in furthering our efforts to mitigating the environmental damage that is happening.
Thank you for the opening comment, Atul, and the nice words. Can I ask Archana, either Panikar or Bhatnagar, both you're there next to each other here, but Archana Panikar, can I ask you to comment or make a question?
Thank you, Karthik Bhai. Thank you, panelists, for wonderful initial comments. I was really wondering, when there were comments made about how children should become part of the mainstream, thinking, and how they can actually contribute to development. Looking at from a very small toddler's point of view, I was just, things were juggling in my mind, whether they should be enjoying their childhood or actually be thinking about that, what positive actions should they be taking on while learning in the process. So maybe if there are some inputs in that regard, that would also help. Thank you.
Yeah, Acha, that's a important point. I think in many cases we've argued that uh, you should build up a love for nature. That's why our camping programs do that. That I think uh, people enjoying what it is, and if they've never experienced it, they don't really comment on it. So that's a good point. And
Making
how do you match
connection.
both these? How do you match both of these? Anyone else wants to ask a question? Otherwise, I'm going back to the panel. Okay, so can I, Gayatri? I start with you this time. If Gayatri, if you want to comment, Gayatri.
Yeah, both the questions to the question number one, which is teacher education, which Preeti had asked. Teacher education is definitely crucial. Teacher training is very crucial. And I have done several trainings with CEE while I was in Abu Dhabi, and you all know about it. Those trainings have been wonderful and magnificent. So I really feel that on a regular basis, teachers should be trained. We should update them on whatever the emerging issues are or emerging pedagogies that come across. That is very, very crucial. But more important, I have always felt, and you can correct me if I'm saying it wrong, is that the teacher education, that is when the teacher trained to be teachers, when they go for their B.Ed courses, if environment education or integrating environment across two different subjects is made crucial, a very, very important subject or an important thing that the B.Ed trainees, the teachers who are going to become teachers, if we train them at that point, and if we really make it worthwhile, maybe it will have a better multiplier effect. Otherwise, we tend to be doing, as environment education organizations that I have seen, we go and we call up schools. There is only so much teachers that we can train, and there's only so much manpower that we have. So to have a better effect, to reach out to more teachers, I really feel that environment education or integrating sustainability education into different subjects or whatever the techniques, the process should be made a very, very intrinsic part of the B.Ed training, not just mentioned passing by, like how we always say, okay, do an environmental study, study, get 33%, and that's about it. That's not the way. But I'm saying really, truly, truly giving it that place that it deserves. That is for the teacher education. The second thing about Archana, the toddler, I totally agree with you, because right now I have a toddler at home. We keep talking about, there was a time where even when we fed the babies, we would be showing the bulbuls and the trees and the thing. Now, if you want to feed the small little child, we put them in front of the television. And when the advertisements come or something like that, open your mouth and then just shove the food in. That is where, so we make them used to this kind of a extra strong stimulations that we started giving for younger people. And we somewhere along the line, what you all also said, connecting with nature, instilling a love for nature, that is somewhere taken a backseat. And I don't know if this is a question of ESD, because when ESD came into question and we all started talking sustainable development, we started stressing more on water, waste, energy, etc., etc., and looking at it from a very anthropocentric, I mean, it was very good. It reached a lot. It really achieved a lot. But somewhere along the line, I think the field education, trying to teach them the love of nature, took a backseat. And I think we need to do that back again. And that's how I feel young people or the toddlers or the early childhood can be connected. So these two are my answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayatri. Rajeshwari, can I go to you?
Sure. I would like to answer some of the questions raised with actual experiences on the ground in Maharashtra. Some of you are probably aware, but I will take this opportunity to inform the audience here that UNICEF has been working very closely with the Department of Environment. So when one of the panelists talked about the whole of the organization approach, this is where we have supported the Marching Vasundhara mission, which is of the Department of Environment here for climate change adaptation. And this focuses on, and one of the things under the Marching Vasundhara was to develop, a lesson plan for classes 1 to 8 on, for the students of classes 1 to 8 on 4 important topics of biodiversity, air pollution, solid waste management, and water resource management. And how was this done? I think there lies this answer to the social fact that UNESCO's report of today is talking about. It was designed by a team from the Regional Center for Urban Environmental Sanitation of the All India Institute of Local Self-Government, Mumbai, the Center for Environment Education, Pune, who's also part of the organizers today, and individual domain experts who validated that manual or that curriculum with children. And the entire idea, therefore, was to inculcate climate action from a very early age and make them climate warriors. And this idea is to actually simplify actions at local level through very joyful learning. So they don't look at it as an assignment, but look at it as part of experiential learning. And I think this initiative or initiatives like this will have a long-lasting impact. And as I speak to you today, it was even formally handed over by the Environment Minister to the School Education Department Minister in December 2021. And STRT, which is the State Council for Educational Research and Training, has taken it over and is now using the Marathi version for incorporating it into the curriculum. So I think this is where some of the issues of training teachers, building their capacities. One is, of course, building capacities for them as, first of all, they are parents before they become teachers. They too have their concerns in going to school, sending their children to school. So I think a lot of the emotional and the mental health of teachers must be emphasized before we even come into starting the lesson plan. And that's very important to take back from the experience of the pandemic. In another project of ours that we are doing as a pilot in 4 districts of the state, looking at urban, rural, peri-urban, and tribal in 100 schools, we're trying to pilot what decisions and what strategies work best for that geographical typology, whereby the communities of teachers, parents, students, and the district administration work together to identify what should be the ways to, when the school open, when the school close, what should be the checklist, and how do you allay the fears of the community, notably the parents, on sending their child to school. And we've developed a manual, a kind of frequently asked questions to be given to the parents when the school opens, so that they say that yes, if this ABC condition is there, I'm safe to send my child to school. If my child is showing ABC symptom, I will not send my child to school. So these are the kind of lessons that we are also engaging parents in making this decision. So I think when I talked about decentralized decision making, it needs to go down to the lowest level, to the level where decision making at the household needs to be empowered. And that can only come when you allay their myths and misconceptions about schools being super spreaders and about children being super spreaders. So I think the environment education and the need for recovery from the learning loss must go and is going hand in hand. And I think in the next few days and weeks, we will be able to come out with something very concrete. I would like to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very useful. Abhijit, can I get you to comment? And can you also just elaborate a little bit about what you said about the strategic changes that we also require? How do you really see these, and how do you do it? Atulji, I'm going to ask you after that, and if you can also spend a few minutes talking about some of the higher education inputs, or higher education initiatives which UNEP has taken. But I'll first go to Abhijit. Abhijit?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, a lot of Gayatri and Rajeshri have already made a lot of valid points, and I'd like to add to that. I mean, one is of course, with respect to the question about enabling teachers, and I think Gayatri took words out of my mouth. Literally, I was going to kind of highlight the same point, and that's about the B.Ed education, and I have, for the life of me, not understood why that hasn't been a focus for organizations, for governments till now, especially when it comes to EE. And that seems to be, the one place where you can, at scale, ensure that there is some amount of perspective and empathy and skills which are built into a teacher's training. And because otherwise, once that stage is passed, and once they get into the humdrum of, especially in government schools, they have election duty, they have 100 other responsibilities. I mean, and kind of heaping activity-based programs and capacity building and various other projects for them is very challenging. All of us have seen that from many of the programs that we run, right? So I think a lot of our work, I mean, can be done at that level, at the B.Ed level, to ensure that there is this kind of long-term impact in, teacher training. The second thing, I think some of the questions in the chat box kind of allude to that, and that's about, the haves and the have-nots, and this disparity between schools and teachers in say, the hinterland and government schools and rural India and the center, and not center, sorry, urban schools. I think this is something that I would, like to highlight in particular, because as I've seen, I mean, whatever my kind of overall understanding of environment education and the way it's been working in India for quite a while, urban schools and urban teachers in particular, and that includes, I mean, of course, students too, seem to kind of garner majority of the large quantum of environment initiatives and programs that organizations put out there, right? Their exposure is tremendous, whether it's to digital learning platforms, whether it's to camping trips, or exposure to biodiversity, exposure to worldviews. And this is something that somehow I think all of us for the longest time have missed the bus when it comes to the hinterland and government and rural schools, which form the large majority of schools, dominating majority of schools in this country, right? And I think there has been this misconception that communities and schools that are at the forefront, and in the sense who live close to nature, live close to biodiverse areas, intrinsically have this connect with biodiversity, and they understand it, and there is no need for us to kind of work with them, but we rather work with the high consumerist societies, in urban centers. And I think that there is a big mistake there, and we're really missing the bus here, and we're kind of forgetting that these are the communities, these are people in rural India who are, whether it's from farming communities or fishing communities, or so many other variety of tribals who are at the front line. And as climate change in particular kind of its impacts increase over the next few years, you need to build that resilience, you need to build that empathy, perspective, skill sets in them, for them to be able to understand their own natural resource base, to be able to understand what is coming over the next couple of decades. And teachers are the center of that. So for example, through our program, Wipro Earthian, where we run with Wipro Foundation and CE, and so many of you are already kind of partners in many ways. So we've realized that mistake, and we're now trying to focus especially on teachers, and just doing ad hoc workshops with them is not the solution. You can do a workshop on citizen science, you can do a workshop on barefoot ecology, you can do a workshop on a number of topics, right? But that's not something that stays with them for a long time. So I think to be able to focus on enabling teachers to work not only in their schools, but also give them the confidence to work as change agents in their communities, is a focus that we are looking at now, because we look at them as community educators and not just educators for the classroom, right? And with this, you also have to have a system of recognition and incentivization. And I don't mean incentivization in cash and things like that, but we as organizations need to find other ways to give them their due, to give them their time in the spotlight, so that they feel recognized, they feel incentivized, especially government school teachers. So these are a couple of points regarding teachers. I think one thing missed out here, I don't know, it probably come later in the in the discussion, is higher education. I mean, faculty in higher education are critical, and that's like this big black hole where none of us seem to have addressed that. There are no common platforms for individual faculty working in their own silos across disciplines on sustainability and sustainability education. So this is a place that are missed out. Well, I mean, I can say with a lot of confidence that is missed in most reports, right? I mean, there is no one paying attention to sustainability and in higher education. I think this is so we need to find ways to work with faculty and start that. It's going to be a long process, but we need to start ways to find ways to deliberate on issues of sustainability in higher education with regard to curriculum, pedagogies, job prospects, green skilling, various things, right? Then about the point about assessment, I think Madhavi brought this up. I mean, I'm not an expert on assessment of EE outcomes. I think there are people like Pramod and so many who have been kind of studying this and researching this for a while. But I can clearly see that it's required. But what I would say is that there's a fine balance to be drawn between kind of using assessment rubrics and different tools to assess learning outcomes in environment environment education, because it's a little tricky. It's a gray area. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of softer intangibles in this area, which are not necessarily to do with skills. And I think that's something to be kept in mind, rather than having a complete focus on assessment and outcomes, and then basing your interventions on that. With children, it's a very interesting point, because in the last 2 years, especially, I've been hearing people talk about climate anxiety and things like that in teenagers and youngsters. And through our activity-based learning programs, when children, I mean, of course, it's from 6th grade onwards, but we see children write about these issues from different parts of the country, and we can tell there is anxiety. And I think it's our role as educators and organizations and experts to not build that anxiety, to inform them adequately, to give them the resources, to give them those perspectives, so that they absorb this information in a very neutral manner, rather than and to feel overly kind of anxious or optimistic. Because I think right now it's a period for people to just absorb different perspectives and ideas, and I think that should be the focus, and not to build this kind of hype up this climate anxiety in children. I think it's not, especially in younger children, it's really, it serves no purpose. It's going to be counterproductive. And overall, I think it's very important for teachers to be at the center of all our efforts, because they are the one kind of if you want equity in and you want long-term sustainability, right? I mean, so teachers form that foundation, that bedrock of any interventions that any of us might do, and whether it's at higher education or in school education. So I think it's a need for us to really give them their due, and to find ways to engage them in the right manner, which and as Rajeshri ma'am mentioned, there's so many other things that we take into account. I mean, government school teachers, you have to look at their mental health, you have to look at so many other factors. You can't just go there with your predetermined programs and outcomes that you want to see without taking that into consideration.
Thank you, Abhijit. I will now go to Atul ji. And Atul, if you can also comment on that higher education point, and because UNEP has done so many interesting things in that. And then I'll hand it over to Sanskriti to look at, there's also many questions and comments coming up on the chat. There's not enough time to sort of bring all of them into the discussion just now, but Atul ji, over to you.
Thank you, Karthikeya bhai. I also wanted to just add a couple of things to what was being said previously, though you asked me on the higher education part. So if you allow, I'll just spend a couple of minutes on that before going.
Certainly.
Meaning, I also see children's education. A lot of panelists were talking about it on environment education and bringing kids up to speed on nature and various issues like that. And I see that all this effort needs to be very closely linked to what is happening on environmental education at all other levels, whether it is awareness of common man, or it is, as Abhijit was talking about, environmental education at higher institutional level. Because I think while we are asking kids to learn about nature and preserve nature, at the same time, our generation people are destroying nature on a daily basis. So actually, we are nullifying all our effects on environmental education for kids by not really looking at what we are doing to the environment and to the nature. And I think both of these aspects are very closely linked. I am often reminded of what Afrosha says in his beach cleaning campaigns, where he invites school children for cleaning the campaigns. He says he starts the cleaning over the weekend by actually apologizing to the children that when they should have been looking at nature from a very different perspective, we have forced them to look at natural disasters or nature disasters in front of their eyes when we ask them for beach cleaning. And I think that aspect needs to be really looked at as to what our generation is really doing in this regard. And that's a very important aspect that should be sensitizing all our efforts for children's education on environment. On the higher education, I totally agree that a lot of focus till now has been on primary schools or secondary schools. But we really need to look at what is happening in the higher educational institutions. And UNEP, though it's a very new office in India, just about 4 years old, and we're just trying to also set up the office. We've started some small steps in this regard, and I'll just highlight some of those efforts. And of course, also request each and every panelist and other members who are on this call to align with whatever is happening in this field and to support us and help us strengthen the work we are doing. We are at this moment in the process of establishing India Green University Network, platform that could help higher educational establishments in India to mainstream environmental education across campuses and higher education institutions. We had organized a very successful stakeholder dialogue, and Kartik Bhai, you and some of the people who are present here were present in that also in September 2021. And you had added a lot of value to those discussions. Now we are in the process of undertaking a survey and getting inputs and feedback from all the stakeholders before operationalizing this. And I must emphasize that it has generated a lot of interest, and we've received a lot of requests from universities, colleges across the country for aligning themselves in their efforts to this network. Our approach is to see how universities can have an impact on the habits of students. In September 2020, we launched the Little Book of Green Nudges in about 136 campuses around the world. It's a quick guide composed of 40 nudges to spark sustainable behavior among students and staffs. And in fact, you'll be glad to know that from India, about 24 campuses are registered on this. Of course, considering the size of India, 24 campuses is really peanuts. But I think this is something we would like to propagate more, considering that there are thousands of colleges in this country and campuses and universities. We also launched in 2021 the UNEP's Sustainable University Framework, which seeks to define what it means to be a sustainable university. Those indicators have been developed and outlined. And it also lays out a pathway to becoming a sustainable university. And we are, through our network now, thinking of contextualizing this framework to India through the platform and support we would receive under this Green Universities Network. And I think that would be an important step, and we would look to CE and to other organizations to be part of this effort. Abhijit was also talking of higher education when we should also be looking at job perspectives, pedagogy, and various other aspects. And from a green job perspective, another important initiative I would like to highlight is the global guidance for education on green jobs. These initiatives are designed to give the higher education community, employers, youth organizations, the tools to prepare students to participate in a green transition. And last year we had supported and jointly held a Green Jobs Expo with UNICEF for the Indian youth. And there's a lot of interest in this, but I think these need to be really scaled up. Finally, I think for a very strong climate action, and we've been talking a lot about this, we are engaged with globally about 1,000+ universities from 68 countries. And out of this, there are about 250 Indian universities in what we call the Race to Zero initiative. And through these universities, we have about 10 million students who have committed to reducing their own campuses' greenhouse gas emissions and transition to net zero as much as possible. So I'll end up by giving a call out for action to all the environmental educators who are here on behalf of UNEP, to all the educators, to the institutions and youth. And this message is to mainstream environment education across your educational institutions. Because remember, we only have one planet, and our health, our well-being, and the planet's well-being are so inextricably connected with each other. And this interconnectedness makes our efforts even more urgent and emergent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Atul. That was very useful. We don't have much time. We're already into that. So can I request my colleague Sanskriti Menon to take over and sort of do sort of final comments. Also, Sanskriti, there is some very interesting suggestions and other things in the chat box. And for those who couldn't ask a question, please do put it in the chat box. We will go through this later and really come back. This is not a dialogue, which is a one-shot dialogue. I thought it would be good to start the dialogue today, being the World Education Day, but it is certainly not a time to close the dialogue. So, Sanskriti,
yes, thanks. And I think that's quite a task for me, because a lot has been said in these last 60 minutes, and I'll try to just highlight some key points. And I think the framing question or the discussion point that the climate and the ecological crisis and the pandemic have forced us to relook at education, but they have also presented an opportunity, as Abhijit mentioned, to reform pedagogy, that learning is not only in the classroom, but also to connect with both the planetary questions as well as local contexts. And as Abhijit highlighted, that the need is also for these local knowledge bases to be built up. And it's both the small nudges and the tactical elements that are needed, but as well as the strategic changes that are needed. And some ideas of those strategic changes were actually, the examples were kind of shared here, that what efforts are being made to do the more systemic sort of changes. Rajeshwari ji mentioned about that, both the UNESCO report and the UNICEF report, the new social contract, and these are complementary, and that schools do need intensive support. And the UNICEF report, in fact, also highlights the nutrition and the integrative development that are needed in the schools, and that schools will need to go beyond the school as the learning environment, and that this requires a society-wide commitment between students, teachers, and knowledge. And the idea of the decentralized decision-making, which Rajeshwari ji mentioned, that is actually being tried out in Maharashtra and 4 districts. But also that, as Kartik Bhai mentioned, that there is a tension that needs to be addressed between the decentralized empowerment that is needed on the one hand, but that there is also a tendency to centralize. But then maybe we look forward to the results from Maharashtra with the 4 districts to see how, what are the learnings and what's going to work at this localized decision making. And that Gayatri ji pointed out that collaboration is key, that the crisis and code red for humanity give us a sense of urgency, but as I reiterating this whole institution approach, and it's not only the school institution but the stakeholders of the institution and how they get involved in sustainability education. And I think both Kartikeya Bhai and Gayatri then also mentioned the tide turner as an example, and that it sort of exemplifies in recent times, and also in this online mode, the handprint approach, which we were able to quickly adapt over the last 2 years to take it forward in a digital way, but also then in a blended sort of approach. The question of the role of children, that are we placing too onerous a responsibility that your childhood is for enjoyment and exploration, etc. And is it that we place a large responsibility that you now also have to take these actions? And Gayatri ji sort of mentioned that, and I think Kartikeya Bhai also, that environment education had a sort of a love for nature approach, while ESD has brought in several issues. I mean, that is the need of the hour, and that it may be counterproductive, as Abhijit mentioned, to present this doomsday scenario. But on the other hand, the handprint approach, which does seek to engage children, their communities in positive action. And this is being evolved, and there are experiences to learn from, that you can take on very serious issues, but then also see how being involved in problem solving does not necessarily contradict from the love of learning kind of imperative that is there as adults, that we would like to create joyful environments of learning for children. The need for teacher support has been mentioned quite a lot. especially the need for emotional and mental health of teachers, that we, in our desire to look at the current school situation, etc., should not forget pre-service orientation. That needs to change as well. But also that, the current situation is yielding experiences which should now then inform pre-service education as well. And as Abhijit mentioned, then also that the idea that of community educators, that educators are not only for classrooms, but also reiterating this whole system approach and the need to involve the stakeholders of education in teacher support as well. The work of UNICEF in Maharashtra with the government of Maharashtra Education Department and Environment Department, to which CE has also contributed. Thanks, Rajeshwari ji, for mentioning it. So again, we do look forward to how it gets adopted by the Education Department and the SCRT, and how it then reaches schools. And again, I think there would be really good interest in seeing the results of such implementation. Thanks for Atulji for the information about the higher education work that is happening, and several initiatives, the IGUN for higher education establishments, a sustainable university framework, the global guidance for green jobs, and the Race to Zero initiatives that were mentioned. I do have a question about how institutions such as SE and several others who are not formal colleges and universities, how do they get involved in these? We would really like to be engaged with higher education as well. So I've tried to just capture some of the notes from what I could manage, but I'm sure there's a lot. And as Kartikeya Bhai said, that let's see this as an iterative dialogue, and many questions in the chat box which will need to be perhaps addressed in future dialogues. Kartikeya Bhai.
Thank you, Saraswati, and I want to thank all the panelists for spending their time and coming together today. It was relatively short notice, but we did feel that today was an important day to start this whole discussion. And thank all of you who participated in it. There are actually so many points which have come out. Sanskriti mentioned most of them, but there are even others, I'm sure there. And I think we can structure a discussion, Sanskriti, next time around each one of these points, because each one of them needs to be thought through over maybe half an hour, 40 minutes to take it forward. So I think some amount of work, and let's decide. I think the teacher training one is very important, and I think, Preeti, if we can really work on that some more. We have the Green Teacher initiative for several years. We have been tweaking it and doing it differently. But Abhijit ji, maybe with you we can really look at this, because this, I think, is got a great potential. Everywhere people have gone through the program and they've felt so empowered and actually done things. And even just a survey of our past students and what they've done itself, I think is quite remarkable wherever I've met them. I think Rajeshwari ji, this whole Maharashtra equation and how Gujarat is quite different, I think, in their thinking. So I think we need to bring experiences from one state to another, because the thinking here currently is for a very different reasons of quality. It is highly centralized. And how do you loosen that centralization, empowering people at the same time, ensure that the good teachers really do have the freedom to interpret. Now, it's something which India has to, at all levels. I think today we are talking about states and center and everything else. I think this whole duality, and we will live with that duality, the centralization, decentralization. But today, a huge opportunity exists because of this medium, where we can all talk together and be with us for an hour and a half, rather than in an earlier situation where we would have to be traveling yesterday, meet today, and then go back by tomorrow. We can actually spend 2 hours and do this dialogue. So I think there's a lot here that to think of. So thank you again, everyone. And Madhuri, finally back to you, if you want to just say, just close this meeting.
Yeah, no, thank you. It has been wonderful. I think it's been there, like Kartikeya Bhai and Sanskriti mentioned, that there's so much more that we can do further. And thanks. I would like to thank everybody who participated, and specifically the panelists, Atul Bagaiji, Abhijit, Rajeshwari, Gayatri. And Kartikeya bhai, thank you for moderating this session. And we will discuss and take it forward into another specific focused discussions. I think that's something that will work out. And we'll also be sharing a quick note about the proceedings from this day today. So thank you everybody for joining, and and look forward to working together over the next few days and months and years. Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks. Thanks,
Bye.
Kartikeya. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you so much.
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
Atul. Thank you.